The morning sun painted the wheat fields golden as 12-year-old Jinho walked barefoot through the tall grass his grandmother. Mara called his name from the small wooden house where smoke rose from the kitchen chimney, the smell of breakfast, mixed with the fresh air of their farming planet New Terragino, looked like any normal boy with messy black hair and dirt under his fingernails from helping with farm work. He wore simple clothes that his grandmother had sewn from old fabric. His feet were tough from walking without shoes across the rocky ground every day. He helped Myra feed the chickens, collect eggs, and water the vegetable garden behind their house. But Jinho was not like other children on New Terra. Something lived inside him that he did not understand, yet when he played with the wooden toys his father had carved for him, his hands moved faster than they should. When he helped carry heavy water buckets from the well, his small arms lifted weights that grown men struggled with. When their dog started barking at night, his ears heard sounds from miles away. 3 years ago, his father Deho had died protecting their village from space pirates who came to steal food and supplies. Deho had been a famous warrior before he became a farmer. He fought in the Great Galactic War, where humans proved they could beat alien armies twice their size. The other farmers still told stories about how Deho killed 20 pirates with just a farming tool and his bare hands. After his father died, Jinho started having strange dreams. Every night he saw his father teaching him how to fight, how to use weapons, how to think like a soldier. The dreams felt more real than being awake. When Jinho woke up each morning, he remembered everything his dream father had shown him. His body knew how to move in ways he had never learned. His mind understood battle plans that belonged to grown warriors. Grandmother Myra noticed the changes in her grandson. She had lived through enough wars to recognize when someone was becoming dangerous. Her husband had been a soldier. Her son had been a warrior. Now her grandson was turning into something that might be more deadly than both of them. She watched Jinho crush a metal spoon by accident and knew their quiet farm life was about to end. The chickens had been acting strange for weeks. They huddled together during the day and refused to come out of their coop at night. Their old dog, Bori, whimpered and paced around the house looking up at the sky. His ears were always pointed toward the stars, as if he heard something coming from space. The animals could sense what humans could not yet see. Far above their planet, alien ships moved through the darkness of space. 9 deadly assassins sat in their private cabins, sharpening weapons and studying photos of a human boy they had been hired by the Galactic Council to kill Jinho before he could grow up to become like his father. Each assassin came from a different alien race, and each one specialized in killing things that were supposed to be impossible to kill. General Vex had chosen these 9 assassins after studying reports about human children. The reports scared him more than any enemy army he had ever faced. Human kids were showing abilities that broke the rules of what living things could do. They moved faster than their nervous system should allow. They lifted heavier weights than their muscles could handle. They fought with skills they had never been taught. The general remembered the Great Galactic War, when humans first joined the fighting. Most alien races had laughed at the small, weak creatures from the planet Earth. Humans had no claws, no armor, no natural weapons. But when the shooting started, those same aliens learned to fear the sound of human battle cries. Human soldiers fought like they were already dead. Human pilots flew their ships into enemy vessels without hesitation. Human commanders made battle plans that seemed insane but always worked. Now human children were showing the same impossible abilities. Jinho was just the first target. The Galactic Council planned to eliminate promising human youngsters before they could become the next generation of unstoppable warriors. They believed that if they killed enough human children, the rest of the species would become weak and effortless. Jinho did not know about the ships in space or the assassins coming to kill him. He spent his days helping Myra with farm work and playing in the wheat fields, but lately his games had changed. Instead of chasing butterflies, he practiced moving silently through the tall grass instead of throwing rocks at targets. He learned to hit small objects from impossible distances. His body was preparing for something his mind did not understand, yet the boy had started noticing things that adults missed. He could smell when strangers had been near their farm. He could hear machines running from miles away. He could feel when someone was watching. him, even when he could not see them. His senses were becoming sharper than any human should possess. Myra began teaching Jinho about his family history. She told him stories about his great-grandfather, who fought against alien invaders on 3 different planets. She explained how his grandfather had been a space marine who specialized in hand-to-hand combat. She described his father's battles during the war and how Daeho had earned respect from alien warriors, who usually looked down on humans. Each story made Jinho feel something awakening inside him. The peaceful farm boy was slowly disappearing. The thing taking his place was harder, stronger, and infinitely more dangerous. Myra could see the change in her grandson's eyes. They were becoming the eyes of a predator. One evening, as they sat on their porch watching the sunset, Myra pulled out an old plasma rifle from under the floorboards. The weapon looked ancient, but Jinho could tell it was still deadly. She began cleaning it with practiced movements while telling him about the night his father had used this same rifle to save their village. The space pirates had come in the dark, expecting to find sleeping farmers. Instead, they found Daeho waiting for them with weapons and a smile that promised death. Every pirate who entered their village that night left in a body bag. The surviving pirates spread stories across the galaxy about the human farmer, who fought like a demon. Now something else was coming to their farm. Myra could feel it in her old bones, the same way she had felt it before every battle she had survived. The animals knew it too. That was why they were hiding and whimpering. Something deadly was approaching their peaceful home. Jinho looked up at the stars and smiled. He could not explain why, but he was excited about whatever was coming. His hands itched to hold weapons. His muscles wanted to move in the fighting patterns his dream father had taught him. The quiet farm boy was ready to become something the galaxy had never seen before. As night fell over New Terra, 9 alien assassins prepared their weapons and reviewed their mission files. They were confident that killing one human child would be easy work. They had no idea they were about to face the deadliest 12-year-old in the history of warfare. The galaxy was about to learn why humans had become the most feared species in known space. The alien ships landed in the dark hours before sunrise, when the mist still covered the wheat fields like a gray blanket. 9 deadly assassins stepped onto the soft earth of New Terra, each one carrying weapons designed to kill the most dangerous creatures in the galaxy. They moved silently through the tall grass toward the small farmhouse, where they expected to find a sleeping boy. And his grandmother Korax was the largest of the assassins. His reptilian body stood 8 feet tall with scales harder than military armor. His claws could tear through steel doors, and his tail could break a grown man in half. He had killed over 200 enemies across 15 different planets. The Galactic Council had paid him a fortune to eliminate one human child. Beside him moved Zilna, a creature that looked like living shadow. She had 4 arms that ended in razor-sharp claws. Her species could become nearly invisible in darkness and strike without making any sound. Zilna had assassinated kings and generals by slipping into their bedrooms and cutting their throats before they could scream. Flying above them was Thrix, an insectoid killer with wings that made no noise as they beat the air. His compound eyes could see in complete darkness and track multiple targets at once. The acid he could spit from his mouth would melt through the strongest armor in seconds. Thrix had never failed to kill his assigned target. The other 6 assassins spread out around the farmhouse, each one expert in different ways of bringing death. They expected this mission to be finished within minutes. After all, what could one human child do against 9 professional killers who had been hunting dangerous prey for decades? But when they reached the house, they found empty beds and cold fireplaces. The assassins looked at each other with confusion. Where was the boy? Where was his grandmother? The intelligence reports had been very clear about the family living here. Why did the house feel like a trap waiting to spring? Jinho had sensed their approach hours before they landed. Something deep in his human DNA had awakened an ancient alarm system that his species had developed over millions of years of surviving on a planet full of predators. He could smell their alien scents carried on the night wind. He could hear their heartbeats from impossible distances. His body knew danger was coming, even when his mind did not understand how the boy had helped his grandmother hide in the storm cellar beneath their house. Then he had climbed onto the roof and waited, his small body pressed against the wooden shingles as he watched the aliens surround his home. His dream father had taught him that the best defense was always a surprise attack. Thrix was circling the house looking for the best way to enter when death dropped from above. Jinho landed on the insectoid assassin's back with perfect balance. His small hands found the weak spot where the creature's head joined its body. One quick twist and Thrix fell to the ground without making a sound. The first alien was dead before the others even knew they were being hunted. Korax heard his companion fall and turned toward the sound. His reptilian eyes searched the darkness but saw nothing. The human child had already moved. His small figure darted between shadows like smoke. The big alien charged toward where he thought Jinho was hiding but found only empty air. The boy appeared beside Korax, moving faster than the alien's eyes could track. Jinho's small fist hit the pressure point at the base of the reptile's skull. The massive assassin dropped like a fallen tree, his nervous system shut down by a blow that should have been impossible for a 12-year-old to deliver. Two aliens dead, and the others were just beginning to understand they were not hunting a helpless child. Jilna melted into shadow form and tried to surround Jinho with her darkness, but human senses had evolved to detect threats that other species could not. Imagine the boy could smell her alien biochemistry, could hear the slight whisper of her movement through air, could feel the displacement she made. Even when invisible, he reached into the shadow that was Zilna and somehow found something solid. His hands closed around what felt like a beating heart. The shadow assassin screamed and became visible again, her forearms clawing desperately at the human child. But Jinho had already crushed the organ that kept her alive. Her body dissolved back into darkness and stayed that way. The remaining 6 assassins began to panic. This was not supposed to happen. They were the hunters, not the prey. But this human child moved like their worst nightmares about what Earth creatures could do in battle. His speed made him nearly impossible to target. His strength let him kill aliens twice his size. His fighting knowledge seemed to come from somewhere beyond his years. Nexer and Vane were cybernetic assassins with computer brains that could calculate millions of combat scenarios every second. Their mechanical bodies were designed for perfect efficiency in killing. Their processors analyzed every possible move the human child might make and prepared countermeasures for each one. But humans had never been logical fighters. They fought with emotion, with instinct, with creativity that no computer could predict. Jinho defeated the cybernetic assassins by doing things that made no sense but worked perfectly. He ducked when he should have attacked. He attacked when he should have dodged. He moved in patterns that violated everything their programming understood about combat. Nexer's head rolled across the grass, separated from his mechanical body by a strike that had found the one weak point in his armor. Vane lasted longer, but not by much. His advanced systems could not process the way this human child fought. Every calculation led to the same impossible conclusion. The boy was doing things that should not be possible. As the sun began to rise over the wheat fields, 5 alien assassins lay dead. The remaining 4 huddled together, no longer confident predators, but terrified prey who finally understood what they were facing. This was not just a human child defending himself. This was something that carried the fighting spirit of his entire speciescilin. Was a gaseous creature that could become nearly invisible and enter enemies through their breathing. He wrapped himself around Jinho's head, expecting to suffocate the boy within seconds, but humans could hold their breath longer than most species, and Jinho had learned from his dream father to fight even when dying. The boy's hands somehow found solid matter within the gas. He grabbed what felt like Elon's core and squeezed until the gaseous alien screamed and dispersed into nothing. 4 aliens dead and 4 still alive, but no longer sure they could complete their mission. Quinn was a psychic assassin who could control minds and make enemies kill themselves. He reached into Jinho's thoughts, expecting to find the simple fears of a frightened child. Instead, he encountered something that burned his mental probes like acid. Human minds were not like other species. They contained layers of consciousness buried, memories and defensive mechanisms that had evolved over millions of years. Jinho's mind held not just his own experiences, but somehow accessed the combat knowledge of every human warrior who had ever lived. The psychic attack backfired, leaving Quinn screaming and clawing at his own head until he fell dead. 3 aliens remained alive, and they were no longer thinking about completing their mission. They were thinking about survival. They had been sent to kill one human child, and instead they were being systematically hunted by something that fought like their species' oldest nightmares about what Earth creatures could become. The Morning sun climbed higher and Jinho stood among the bodies of 6 dead assassins. His young face was calm, but his eyes held depths that belonged to someone much older. His clothes were torn and bloody, but he moved without pain or exhaustion. Whatever was happening to him went far beyond normal human abilities. He looked toward where the 3 surviving assassins were hiding and smiled. It was not a child's smile. It was the expression of a predator who had found prey. The galaxy was about to learn why humans had become the most feared species in known space, and it would learn that lesson from a 12-year-old farm boy who carried the fighting spirit of his entire race. Rozek was a shapeshifter who could copy any form he had seen. His species was famous across the galaxy for perfect mimicry that fooled even advanced scanners. He studied the dead human warrior Deho from old photographs and began changing his body to match the alien. Believed that emotional manipulation would succeed where brute force had failed. The false Deho walked out of the wheat field with arms stretched wide, calling his son's name in a perfect copy of the dead man's voice. Rozek had studied human psychology and knew that children always ran to their parents when afraid. He expected Junho to drop his guard and come running for a hug that would end with a knife between his ribs, but when the fake father approached, Jinho simply smiled and drove his fist through the creature's chest. The shapeshifter's eyes went wide with shock as he felt his heart explode inside his body. How had the human child known? This was not really his father. The disguise had been perfect down to every scar and wrinkle. Jinho pulled his bloody hand free and looked down at the dying alien. His voice was calm when he spoke, but carried an edge that made the remaining assassins shiver. "You smell wrong," he said simply. "My father smelled like earth and growing things. You smell like fear." And Lies Rozek tried to speak, tried to ask how the boy had known, but his lungs were filling with blood. The shapeshifter died, never understanding that humans could recognize their loved ones through senses that went deeper than sight or sound. The bond between human family members was something alien species had never learned to fake properly. 2 assassins remained alive. Makra was an energy being who could become pure electricity, and Grix was a warrior from a heavy gravity world with bones like steel and muscles that could crush stone. Both aliens looked at each other and realized they were probably going to die on this farm, but they had been paid too much money to run away. Now Makra transformed into crackling electricity and tried to fry Jinho's nervous system from the inside, but human bodies had evolved amazing resistance to electrical shock. The boy's ancestors had survived lightning strikes and learned to use electricity as a tool instead of fearing it as a weapon. Jinho grabbed the energy being with his bare hands, ignoring the pain as electricity coursed through his body. His human nervous system adapted to the current and somehow turned it back on itself. Makra screamed as his own electrical nature was used against him. The energy being flickered and went dark, leaving only scorch marks on the grass. Grix was the last assassin alive. He stood 8 feet tall with gray skin like armor and muscles that had been strengthened by growing up on a world where gravity was 5 times stronger than Earth normal. His species had conquered 12 planets through pure physical dominance, and he had personally killed over 300 enemies in hand-to-hand combat. The alien warrior looked down at the human child standing among 8 dead assassins and felt something he had never experienced before. Fear. This small creature had systematically destroyed killers who should have been able to eliminate entire armies. How was one human boy so deadly? Jinho looked up at the massive alien and his smile grew wider. His father had taught him in dreams that the biggest enemies often fell the hardest when you found their weak spots. Every creature, no matter how strong, had points where they were vulnerable. The trick was getting close enough to exploit them. Grex charged forward with a roar that shook the farmhouse windows. His massive fists could punch through steel walls and his kick could snap trees in half. He had fought creatures twice his size and won through sheer brutal power, but humans had never fought fair, and Jinho was no exception. The boy moved like water around the alien's attacks. His small size let him slip between Grix's defenses, while his impossible speed kept him ahead of the creature's reactions. Jinho struck nerve clusters that even veteran warriors did not know existed. His knowledge of anatomy seemed to include every species in the Galactic. Grix felt his left arm go numb, then his right leg began to fail. The human child was systematically shutting down his nervous system with surgical precision. The alien warrior had fought for 50 years and never encountered an enemy who understood his body better than he did himself. The massive alien fell to his knees as Jinho delivered a final strike to the base of his skull. Grix toppled forward and lay still, his breathing stopped by a blow that had severed the connection between his brain and his body. The last assassin was dead, and the human child stood alone among 9 alien corpses. Grandmother Myra emerged from the storm cellar carrying the old plasma rifle and a metal box that hummed with strange energy. She looked around at the bodies scattered across their farm and nodded with satisfaction. Her grandson had done well, but she knew this was only the beginning. The metal box contained 9 small devices that glowed with soft yellow light. These were homing beacons that had been secretly attached to each assassin before they left their ships. As each alien died, their beacon had activated, creating a trail that led directly back to whoever had sent them. Jinho wiped the blood from his hands on his torn shirt and looked up at his grandmother. His young face was calm, but his eyes now held the depth of someone who had seen death and dealt it without hesitation. The peaceful farm boy was gone, replaced by something that carried the fighting spirit of his entire species. Mira opened her arms, and Jinho ran to her like the child he still was, despite everything that had just happened. She held him close and whispered that she was proud of him, but also warned that more enemies would come. The galaxy had just learned that human children were not victims to be eliminated, but weapons to be feared. The alien ships in orbit had been waiting for confirmation that their assassins had completed the mission. Instead, they received a transmission from the planet's surface. 9 coffins launched into space with enough force to reach their vessels. Each coffin contained not just a body, but detailed recordings of how that assassin had died. The recordings showed impossible things. A 12-year-old human child, moving faster than trained killers, could react, striking with force that should have required mechanical enhancement, demonstrating combat knowledge that belonged to experienced warriors. The alien ship crews watched in growing horror as their most feared assassins were systematically destroyed one by one. The ships fled New Terra, carrying news that would spread across the galaxy within days. Humanity's children were not just potential threats. They were active weapons that their entire species was built around, protecting the peaceful farmers and merchants that other races had grown comfortable with were revealed as the outer shell of something infinitely more dangerous. Jinho stood in the wheat field holding his grandmother's hand as they watched the alien ships disappear into hyperspace. The boy had changed during the fight. His movements were more fluid, his awareness sharper, his understanding of violence more complete. The dreams his father had sent him were becoming reality. The galaxy was about to learn that humans had been hiding their true nature for generations. Every human child carried the genetic memory of warriors who had conquered Earth's most dangerous predators. Every human family would fight to the death to protect their young. Every human settlement was a potential fortress waiting to be a CTIVATEDAs. The morning sun climbed higher over New Terra. Jinho began planning for the next wave of enemies he knew would come. The assassins had been just the beginning. Someone had sent them, and that someone would not be happy about their failure. The real war was about to start, but the human child was ready. His father's training was complete, his abilities were awakened, and his understanding of what he was meant to become was crystal clear. The galaxy had made the mistake of threatening a human family, and now they would learn why that was the most dangerous thing any species could do. 9 alien assassins had come to kill 1 human child. They had failed, and their deaths would serve as a warning to anyone else who thought humanity's young were easy targets. The message was simple and clear. Human children were not prey, they were predators, and the galaxy would learn to fear them accordingly. The alien ships that had carried the 9 assassins floated in space above New Terra, their crews waiting nervously for word that the human child was dead. Instead of the expected confirmation message, they received 9 coffins launched from the planet's surface with enough velocity to reach orbit without rocket assistance. Captain Vorth commanded the lead ship, and his tentacles trembled as he opened the first coffin. Inside the body of Thrix, the insectoid assassin lay twisted with his neck snapped in a way that suggested incredible strength. The recording device attached to his armor showed the final moments of his Leifvorth watched in horror as the footage revealed a small human child dropping from a rooftop onto the deadly assassins. Back the boy moved with fluid grace that seemed impossible for his size. His hands found the exact spot needed to kill Thrix instantly without making any sound. The captain had seen Thrix eliminate entire military squads, and here he was killed in seconds by a 12-year-old. The other 8 coffins contained similar recordings. Each assassin had been destroyed with methods that defied everything the aliens thought they knew about human capabilities. The child fought like he had decades of combat experience. His knowledge of alien anatomy was perfect, his timing was flawless, and his strength was far beyond what his small body should possess. General Vex reviewed the recordings in his command center, surrounded by military advisors. From across the galaxy, the footage showed their most feared killers being systematically hunted by a human boy who moved like liquid death. Each assassination was carried out with precision that veteran soldiers would admire. The recordings revealed something that terrified the alien leadership more than any weapon. The human child was not using advanced technology or alien enhancements. He was fighting with pure biological capability that his species had somehow developed naturally. His speed, his strength, his combat instincts were all products of human evolution. Dr. Kelm, the Galactic Council's chief scientist, studied the biometric data attached to each recording. The readings showed impossible things. The human child's reflexes operated faster than his nervous system should allow. His muscle fibers generated force that violated known laws of physics. His brain processed tactical information at superhuman speeds. The scientists' report concluded that humans were not just another species that had gotten lucky in a few battles. They were something fundamentally different from every other known form of life. Their children possessed capabilities that challenged the basic understanding of what living creatures could do. Meanwhile, on New Terra, Jinho sat with his grandmother on their porch, watching the sunset paint the sky red. His clothes had been washed and mended, but the boy himself had changed in ways that went deeper than appearance. His eyes held knowledge that belonged to someone much older. His movements carried the confidence of a proven warrior. Myra looked at her grandson and saw the completion of something that had been building for generations. Every human who had ever fought for survival, every warrior who had died protecting their family, every soldier who had charged impossible odds, lived on in the boy's genetic memory. The old woman began telling Jinho stories about his ancestors. His great-great-grandfather had been a Marine who fought alien invaders on the colony worlds. His great-grandfather had been a pilot who flew suicide missions against enemy dreadnoughts. His grandfather had been a commando who specialized in impossible infiltration missions. Each story awakened more memories in Jinho's mind. The combat techniques his dream father had taught him began connecting to a vast network of knowledge that stretched back through generations of human warriors. He understood now that he was not just one boy defending his farm. He was the living embodiment of his species' will to survive. The genetic memory that guided his fighting was not magic or alien technology. It was the result of millions of years of human evolution compressed into instincts that could be awakened when needed. Every human child carried this potential, but most never accessed it because they lived in peaceful times. But when threatened, when their families were in danger, when survival was at stake, human children could become something that other species had nightmares about. They became the ultimate expression of a species that had clawed its way from prey animals to apex predators. Through pure determination, Jinho felt the change completing itself inside him. The peaceful farm boy was gone, replaced by something that understood violence at a fundamental level. He could sense enemies from miles away, could predict their movements before they made them, could kill with efficiency that veteran assassins would respect. That night, the boy walked through the wheat fields, checking for any threats that might still be hiding. His enhanced senses swept the area like radar, detecting nothing more dangerous than field mice and sleeping birds. The immediate danger was over, but he knew more would come. The galaxy had learned that human children were not easy targets, but they had not yet understood the full implications of that lesson. When the next wave of enemies arrived, they would face not just one awakened human child, but potentially thousands. Others like Jinho existed on colony worlds across human space, waiting for their own genetic memories to activate. The Recordings of the assassination attempt were already spreading through Galactic communication networks. Different species reacted in different ways. Some called for immediate military action against humanity before they could fully develop their potential. Others suggested diplomatic solutions that would avoid conflict entirely, but all of them recognized that something fundamental had changed in the balance of galactic power. The species they had dismissed as lucky newcomers was revealing capabilities that challenged every assumption about warfare. The humans were not just good soldiers, they were something else entirely. Earth's government received copies of the recordings within hours of the failed assassination attempt. The footage of Jinho destroying 9 professional killers was studied by military analysts who began updating their understanding of human potential. Similar children existed throughout human space, each one carrying the same genetic gifts. The response from human leadership was swift and decisive. Every human colony received new defense protocols. Every human family was issued emergency communication devices, and every human child began receiving basic combat training disguised as games and sports. The galaxy had declared war on human children, and humanity would respond accordingly. Jinho continued helping his grandmother with farm work, but now their daily routine included weapons training and tactical exercises. The boy learned to use the plasma rifle with deadly accuracy, practiced moving silently through the wheat fields, and studied the weak points of every known alien species. Grandmother Myra taught him about human history and the long chain of warriors who had passed down their knowledge through genetic memory. She explained that he was not unique among human children, but rather the first to have his abilities awakened by direct threat. The old woman also began preparing for the larger conflict she knew was coming. The galaxy would not accept the humiliation of 9 failed assassins without response. They would send armies next time, and when they did, every human settlement would become a fortress defended by people who carried the fighting spirit of their entire species. As Jinho practiced his combat skills under the stars of New Terra, his enhanced senses detected ships moving in the outer system. More aliens were coming, drawn by the recordings of his battle with the assassins. Some came as potential enemies, others as curious observers, but all of them wanted to see the human child who had redefined what their species was capable of. The galaxy was about to learn that the assassination attempt had awakened something that could not be put back to sleep. Human children across known space were beginning to access genetic memories that turned them into living weapons. Every threat against humanity's young would activate more of these sleeping warriors. Jinho looked up at the stars and smiled. He could feel others like him awakening on distant worlds, could sense the vast network of human genetic memory coming alive in response to external threats. The galaxy had tried to eliminate humanity's future, and instead had triggered the rise of something they were not prepared to face. The 9 coffins floating in space above New Terra carried more than just dead assassins. They carried a message that would echo across the galaxy. Human children were not victims to be eliminated, but predators to be feared, and anyone who forgot that lesson would learn it the hard way. The 9 coffins drifted through space, carrying their deadly cargo toward the alien fleet that had brought the assassins to New Terra. Each coffin was equipped with homing beacons that led directly back to the ships responsible for the failed mission. The alien crews watched in growing terror as the containers approached their vessels. Inside each coffin lay not just a dead assassin, but detailed recordings of how they had died. The footage showed impossible things: a 12-year-old human child systematically destroying killers who had eliminated threats across the galaxy for decades. Each death was captured from multiple angles, showing techniques that violated everything the aliens thought they knew about. Combat Captain Vorth received the first coffin aboard his ship, and his tentacles shook as he reviewed the recording of Thrix's death. The insectoid assassin had been one of the most feared killers in known space, able to eliminate entire military units with his acid spit and razor claws, yet the human child had snapped his neck in seconds without making any sound. The message attached to each coffin was written in the common galactic language, but carried undertones that spoke to something primal in every species. That read it: you sent 9 assassins to kill 1 human child. He has sent back their coffins if you want to continue this conversation. Earth's defense fleets are waiting at these coordinates. The coordinates divided were not for the remote farming planet, but for the heart of human space where Earth's most powerful warships had been mobilizing since the first alien vessel entered their territory. The message was clear: humanity was no longer hiding their true military capabilities. General Vex convened an emergency meeting of the Galactic Council as news of the failed assassination spread across known space. Representatives from dozens of species gathered to watch the recordings and discuss what they meant for the future of galactic politics. The footage showed combat abilities that challenged basic understanding of biology. The human child moved faster than his nervous system, should allow struck with force that his small muscles could not generate, and demonstrated knowledge of alien anatomy. That no Earth creature should possess. Dr. Kelm presented his analysis of the biometric data collected during each fight. The readings indicated that human children possessed genetic memories that could be activated under extreme stress. These memories contained the combat experience of countless previous generations, compressed into instincts that turned youngsters into perfect warriors. The scientific evidence suggested that humans had been unconsciously preparing for galactic warfare for millions of years. Their evolution on a planet full of dangerous predators had created survival mechanisms that other species lacked. When threatened, human children could access abilities that made them deadlier than trained soldiers. Different alien civilizations reacted to the news in different ways. The militaristic Corvan Empire called for immediate invasion of human space before Earth's children could fully develop their potential. The peaceful Zenith Federation suggested diplomatic solutions that would avoid further conflict. Every species recognized that something fundamental had changed in the balance of galactic power. The humans they had dismissed as lucky newcomers were revealing capabilities that made them potentially the most dangerous civilization in known space on Earth. Government leaders reviewed the recordings with growing understanding of what their species truly was. Military analysts had always wondered why human soldiers seemed to fight with abilities beyond their training. Now they realized that combat prowess was literally written into human DNA. The response from Earth's leadership was swift and decisive. Every human colony received new defense protocols based on the assumption that their children were living weapons waiting to be activated. Emergency communication networks were established to coordinate responses to future threats. Most importantly, human families across the galaxy were warned that their children might possess abilities they had never imagined. The recordings of Jinho's battle were distributed to every human settlement with instructions on how to recognize and nurture these awakening capabilities. Meanwhile, on New Terra, Jinho continued his normal routine of helping grandmother Myra with farm work, but now their daily activities included advanced combat training. The boy learned to use weapons with deadly precision, practiced moving silently through various terrains, and studied the weaknesses of every known alien species. His enhanced senses could detect ships approaching from the edge of the solar system. Some carried scientists who wanted to study the phenomenon of human genetic memory. Others brought diplomats hoping to negotiate peace before full-scale war broke out. A few carried new assassins sent by species that refused to believe one human child could be so dangerous. Jinho felt no fear about the approaching threats. His awakened genetic memory contained the combat experience of thousands of human warriors who had faced impossible odds and survived. He understood tactics that veteran commanders would admire and possessed fighting skills that professional soldiers spent decades trying to master. Grandmother Myra watched her grandson practicing with the plasma rifle and saw the completion of something that had been building in their family for generations. Every male in their bloodline had been a warrior, but Jinho was different. He carried not just his own family's fighting spirit, but the accumulated combat knowledge of his entire species. The old woman began teaching Jinho about human history and the long chain of conflicts that had shaped their people. She explained how their ancestors had survived ice ages, alien invasions, and civil wars through sheer determination to protect their families. Each generation had passed down their knowledge through genetic memory. The recordings from New Terra continued spreading across the galaxy, triggering reactions that ranged from fear to fascination. Some species began developing new weapons specifically designed to fight human children. Others started peace negotiations, hoping to avoid conflict with a species that could turn their young into perfect killers. But the most significant reaction came from human colonies scattered across known space. Children on dozens of worlds began experiencing the same awakening that Jinho had undergone. Their genetic memories activated in response to the knowledge that their species was under threat. Parents reported that their youngsters were demonstrating impossible physical abilities, tactical knowledge beyond their years, and combat instincts that seemed to come from nowhere. Human children were accessing a vast genetic database of warfare accumulated over millions of years of evolution. Earth's military began establishing training centers disguised as schools where awakened human children could learn to control their new abilities. The goal was not to create child soldiers, but to help youngsters understand the power they carried and use it responsibly. The Galactic communication networks buzzed with reports of human children displaying superhuman capabilities. Colony worlds sent footage of youngsters moving faster than recording equipment, could track lifting weights that should have crushed their small bodies, and demonstrating fighting techniques that belonged in military manuals. Each new report added to the growing understanding that humanity was not just another species with good soldiers. They were something fundamentally different from every other known form of life. Their children possessed capabilities that turned the basic assumptions about warfare upside down. The failed assassination attempt on New Terra had triggered the awakening of human genetic memory across the galaxy. What had been intended as a surgical strike against one dangerous child had instead activated thousands of potential weapons scattered throughout human space. Jinho stood in the wheat fields of his family farm, watching ships approach through the atmosphere. Some carried enemies who still believed they could eliminate the threat he represented. Others brought allies who wanted to understand how humans had developed such incredible abilities. The boy felt no concern about the approaching visitors. His enhanced senses could identify the intentions of everyone aboard the various vessels. His genetic memory provided tactical assessments of every possible threat, and his awakened abilities made him confident in his capacity to deal with any challenge. The galaxy had learned that human children were not victims to be eliminated, but weapons to be feared. The message had been written in the blood of 9 dead assassins and delivered in coffins that carried recordings of their destruction. Now everyone would discover what it meant to face a species that had spent millions of years preparing for this moment. As the first ships landed in the distance, Jinho smiled and began walking toward them. His grandmother followed, carrying the plasma rifle and additional weapons they might need. The peaceful days on their farm were over, but something much more interesting was about to begin. Within days, the recordings of Jinho's battle had spread throughout every galactic communication network, reaching civilizations in the furthest corners of known space. The footage was analyzed by military experts, studied by scientists, and watched by billions of beings who struggled to understand what they were seeing. The images showed a 12-year-old human child systematically destroying 9 of the galaxy's most feared assassins using nothing but his natural abilities. The boy moved with speed that defied physics, struck with force that his small body should not possess, and demonstrated combat knowledge that belonged to experienced warriors. Different species reacted to the recordings in ways that reflected their own nature. The warlike Corvan Empire immediately began preparing invasion fleets, convinced that humanity needed to be eliminated before their children could fully develop their potential. The Corvan military had conquered 17 star systems through superior firepower, and they believed overwhelming force could solve the human problem. But the peaceful Zenith Federation took a different approach. Their diplomatic corps began drafting treaty proposals that would establish formal recognition of human territorial rights in exchange for guarantees that Earth's children would not be used as weapons of conquest. The Zenith had survived for millennia through negotiation and compromises. The scientific community was split between those who wanted to study human genetic memory and those who believed it represented a threat to galactic stability. Dr. Kelm published research papers suggesting that humans were the product of directed evolution, possibly engineered by an unknown ancient civilization. His theories sparked fierce debate among xenobiologists who had spent their careers studying the development of intelligent life. The idea that one species could possess such advantages over all others challenged fundamental assumptions about how evolution worked in the galaxy. Meanwhile, the recordings continued to reveal new details about human capabilities that terrified military analysts. Across known space, frame-by-frame analysis showed that Jinho had been predicting his enemies' movements before. They made them. His reactions began microseconds before the aliens even started their attacks. This suggested that human genetic memory included not just combat techniques but also predictive algorithms that could analyze enemy behavior patterns. In real time, the implications were staggering. If human children could anticipate their opponents' actions, then traditional military tactics would be useless against them. General Vex found himself in an impossible position. The Galactic Council had authorized the assassination attempt, expecting a quick surgical strike that would eliminate a potential threat. Instead, they had triggered the awakening of human genetic memory across known space and turned one dangerous child into thousands. Reports flooded in from human colonies throughout the galaxy. Children on dozens of worlds were demonstrating the same impossible abilities that Jinho had shown their parents. Sent footage of youngsters moving faster than recording equipment could track, lifting objects that should have crushed their small bodies. Each new report added to the growing realization that humanity had been hiding their true nature for generations. Every human family contained potential weapons. Every human settlement was a fortress waiting to be activated, and every human child carried the combat experience of their entire species. The economic implications were as staggering as the military ones. Trade agreements had to be renegotiated based on the new understanding of human capabilities. Shipping contracts were canceled as alien merchants refused to transport goods through human space. Defense budgets across the galaxy exploded as civilizations prepared for potential conflict. Some species attempted to develop countermeasures against human genetic memory. The Corvan Empire funded research into weapons that could disrupt the neural pathways that activated inherited combat knowledge. Other civilizations worked on armor designed to withstand the impossible strength that human children could generate. But these efforts revealed another terrifying aspect of human evolution. The genetic memory was not a weakness that could be exploited, but a strength that adapted to new threats. Each attempt to counter human abilities only triggered the development of new capabilities on New Terra. Jinho continued his daily routine, but now it included visits from researchers, diplomats, and military observers who wanted to understand what he represented. The boy handled these meetings with the calm confidence of someone much older. His enhanced awareness letting him read the intentions of every visitor. Some came seeking knowledge, hoping to learn how human genetic memory worked. Others arrived with hidden agendas, planning to kidnap or eliminate him before his abilities could spread further. Jinho dealt with each group according to their intentions, welcoming honest researchers and quietly eliminating those who posed threats. Grandmother Myra had become something of a celebrity among human families whose children were experiencing similar awakenings. She received messages from parents across the galaxy asking for advice on how to help their youngsters control their new abilities. The old woman established a communication network that connected awakened human children and their families. Her farm became an informal training center where youngsters could learn to manage their genetic memory without becoming overwhelmed by the combat knowledge. It contained the most significant development came when human children began demonstrating abilities that went beyond individual combat skills. They showed tactical awareness that let them coordinate with each other across vast distances, their genetic memory creating a shared consciousness that linked awakened youngsters throughout human space. This collective awareness meant that threatening one human child now potentially triggered responses from hundreds of others. The galaxy had not just awakened individual weapons, but had created a distributed defense network that could respond to threats anywhere in human territory. Earth's government finally acknowledged what they had long suspected but never publicly admitted: human evolution had been preparing their species for galactic warfare for millions of years. The peaceful farmers and merchants that other species had grown comfortable with